Hi and welcome to the second part of the Railway Laser Line's 2-lane loco shed build. In this video I'll be turning my attention to the interiors and then moving on to the roof area before adding some bespoke finishing touches of my own. I hope you enjoy the video. If you have any questions, please get in touch. I'm now at the stage of putting the roof windows onto the corrugated roof, and these are very fragile, so be careful when you're handling them. I'm using some rocket card glue here. It says in the instructions to use PVA. That's fine as well. I just feel that rocket card glue goes off a bit quicker and is easier to control from the bottle. So a thin bead along the edge of each of the four sides of the rectangular windows. If you put too much on, this just wipes off with water, so you don't have to worry about solvents and stuff. And you just lay that over the position, lower it on to the position here. I've got a bit of paper under there just so it's keeping the glue from my cutting mat. You're obviously doing this with the roof part pointing up, so the flat side's underneath. Press it into position, and before it starts to set, very carefully turn it over so it doesn't stick to the paper below. Okay, and just check that everything is flush and smooth on the back. I'm quite happy with that. So that's that done, and I'll move on to the next one. Right, what I've got here, I've got two roof sections. The one at the bottom of the shot has had the windows fitted and then primed. This is just a Humbrol grey primer. You'll notice there's rectangular holes in the roof as well. They're for vents, which I will come to later. I've cut the rectangular vents out from the original piece. The top roof section is a test. I was very kindly given a spare section from Steve to test out different colours, and what you'll see there is the far left a very light grey, the middle one it's actually called bleached tarmac from Precision Paints, this is one here, and this one here, which is the chosen one, is a light sky grey, and that's from Tamiya, and that's XF19, and that'll be the one that I use on the outside corrugated materials, and then obviously I'll give it a weather down. The one I'm trying to replicate in very loose terms from Haymarket Depot had a very light roof, but in certain shots it became more of a sky grey, mid grey, obviously with weathering. So initially I wanted to go the one on the left, and I've said for the one on the right is the best one for the overall appearance, under the lights, up the loft, and it'll show a nice weathered finish as well. We're now on to fitting the internal parts of the roof windows onto the main roof itself. For this I'll be using glue and glaze. It's thinner than PVA and it dries very clear and it doesn't react with the glazing. All I use is a cocktail stick with some of the glue and glaze, and I, on the inside of the window frame, dot dot dot, and then spread it out all the way around That's me applied the glue now, and it's now ready to fit to the roof. You could turn it over and fit it to the inside as it sits just now, but what I find better, a wee top tip here, to align them properly, I actually turn the roof over and align the roof with the window. If you do that, you don't have to worry about moving it around into position. You just hover it over the correct area, making sure it's square, and you lower it on once you're happy. And carefully, gently press into position. Now, you want to leave this for around, I don't know, a minute or two, just to kind of start to bite. But whilst you've still got a bit of time to do adjustments, and then we'll turn it over and we'll check that it lines up with the other windows that I've fitted. Okay, I've turned it over. I'm happy with the alignment with the other windows that I've fitted. There is a bit of glue coming out of the sides there, so I just take a clean cocktail stick and a damp cloth and scrape the excess off. And if needs be, and I think it's still a bit untidy, I go in with the dampened kitchen towel, lightly wipe, and then I've got a dry one here. I can just dab it, and if the glue is away, I'm happy. There's still a little bit there, so I'll get in again with the cocktail stick and wipe it away. Remember, this dries clear anyway, but you don't want to have too much of the way of glue showing. So I'm happy with that. What I would probably do now is just maybe stick a scrap piece of wood or whatever you've got lying about. I've got a strip of MDF here, and I put a small weight on it. You know, anything from your computer mouse, or you know, a couple of jars of paint or something, just to weigh it down until it glues flat. And there you have it. Easy as that. What I'm doing here is I'm fitting the window ledges to the bottoms of the side windows. Now these are, there's a spare one here, little bits of MDF, and the outer bit is a small lip there, so that goes on the outside of the building to give a realistic window sill. I'm just holding them in place with some of those clamps. The PVA glue, after about an hour, will have bonded, and I can remove the clamps and let it dry naturally. As you can see, the windows have been fitted to the first three. They've just been placed in just now and not glued in. And I sprayed these windows with a sea grey, and I fitted the frosted glass to the back. Now for this I used Deluxe Glue and Glaze, because it's water based, won't react with the plastic, and dries clear. So that's what I'd recommend you use for the very fine window frames. I just glued around the outside frame and along the central part there. I didn't bother with the very thin edges. I'll be putting this in place with a thin bead of PVA around the outer side, putting it in position, and then wiping excess glue off with a damp cloth or damp brush. Well, that's the windows now in. A bit fidgety to get them all lined up, but because I was using PVA, I had that time to manipulate and reposition, and then obviously got rid of any oozed out PVA with a wee wet paintbrush and a damp cloth. I have to say they look really smart, especially with the frosted glass. What I'm doing now with the interior is adding the breeze block walls. And the breeze blocks themselves are laser cut from card, and they actually look quite cool straight from the box without any form of finishing on them. They've got this kind of brown burnt appearance, and it just looks grimy. So they look quite cool just placed in there. However, if you want to get rid of this exposed card edge, you'd want to paint them. For this I used Tamiya white and a light grey from Tamiya, and I just mixed to get the right shade for breeze blocks, just referring to an image on Google. So I then gave them a good airbrushing with that, and as you can see, it gets rid of the exposed card edge. Fitting these is very simple as well, because railway laser lines are labelled them, and if it's W, it's the window side. If it's NW, it's the no window side, and if it's the ends, obviously it's labelled as such. So it's very easy to understand where to put them all. It's quite self-explanatory when you start piecing it all together anyway. So there I've got them test fitted. Luckily these ones don't need trimmed. They have bowed a little bit, and that's just with the natural card, with obviously the moisture of the paint, which is fair enough, but it doesn't stop them going flat for the gluing process. That's why you have to weigh them down though. When it comes to putting the breeze blocks on, what you've got to do is you've got to put the shed itself onto the hard standing base. Once the base is correctly in position, I took a fine propelling pencil lead, they're very fine and better to use than a normal pencil, and then drew a line around the top of the base, and once I removed the base you're left with this fine line all the way around. That's where the breeze blocks sit onto. You don't want them sitting at the bottom because then the base won't fit, so if you sit them on the line, that'll allow the base to be fitted. I just use PVA, and you know, when you're using PVA, make sure it's clamped down or weighed down for about 1 to 2 hours to let the glue kind of get a good grip, and then you can just leave it to dry naturally. So I'll show you a wee sequence of me putting a couple of those panels on, and then it'll be a case of just leaving it to dry. As you can see from this view, the breeze block is now in place, and you can see how it's been raised from the bottom to allow the base to sit in. The hexagonal type supports have just been put in place using PVA again, small dabs at the back, pushed in position, wipe off the excess, and if you have to, weigh them down or use the small clamps that I've been using to hold them in position for half an hour before allowing to dry naturally. The framework at the very end there is very fragile, so you've got to be very careful. Again, a thin bead of glue on the thin parts, along the top of the hex, put in position, weigh down, wipe any glue off, and allow to set. There's 4 of these sections, 2 at the door end and 2 at the solid wall end. Okay, what I've got here is I've got the side doors in position. These are 2-part MDF, and you just glue them back to back. They've got slight door handle detail on them. You might have to file them very slightly to get them into position. I've just held in place with PVA. There's a door at each end of the shed, and I've finished it with a Humbrol sea grey paint to match the window frames. I'm now turning my attention to the door pack, and in the standard kit you get 3 doors, 2 the same and 1, shall we say, more closed than the other 2. What I've done is I've primed them in white primer, and I've then taken a Humbrol 24, I think it's trainer yellow, and I've gone over it 2 or 3 times to get a good coverage of paint. I've done that on both sides, okay, because you will see the inside of the doors. You don't want to leave that blank. Once you've got a good coverage, this is an enamel so it takes a while to dry, I'm going to mask off striped areas, and the unmasked areas will be painted black to give a horizontal yellow black stripe pattern as the ones I'm copying from Haymarket TMD in the 1980s. Obviously there are different patterns, some are even full yellow doors, so you would maybe have to look at the one most relevant to you, the era you're working in, and colour them accordingly. I did try another paint. I did try Tamiya flat yellow, but I felt it was too bright to be in the era that I wanted. Maybe for more of a modern era that would be more applicable. There's an extension pack you can buy from Rail Laser Lines, and it's full length doors and you get 3 in them, and basically if you lift the shed up you'll be able to slide that door in. It won't need propped up in any way because obviously it's fully closed. With the other ones you'll have to either hold in position with some blue tack if you want to maybe change the positions of the doors from time to time, or just fix in position with PVA permanently. But certainly these full closed extension pack are handy if you want to show the shed out of hours, if you like, fully closed. What I've got here is I've got the doors all masked off to paint the black stripes, so it goes black, yellow, as is prototypical on many depots across the country. Each banding is made up of 9 separate small slats. This is fairly prototypical, as pictures I've looked at vary from 8 to 10. Okay, what I'm doing now is I'm putting on the cross members on the roof, as you can see on one side here. These are very fine, delicate strips of MDF, and they've got notches in them. And these correspond with the trusses, and it should just sit nicely over the trusses when it's in position. I've just primed them with Humbrol, and then I've gone over with a number 67 tank grey, and then I've cleaned out the notches. Okay, I recommend you do that. You don't want to force them over these trusses, and with the coats of paint, especially if you're using an aerosol, it'll tighten the notch slightly, and you don't want to have to force them down. You'll break this and you'll ruin your day. So I just opened them up a little bit with the Stanley blade to clean off the paint, basically, sort of back to they were before they were painted. They then sit snugly and carefully into position. Okay, I have not painted the top edge because the roof is going to be attached to that. So all I did was I blue tacked them onto a piece of paper or a bit of card and then spray painted them, and the bottom is bare MDF. Okay, now I'll zoom in a little bit and show you the spacing that we require. Okay, first of all I started at the bottom and worked my way up. The bottom one is pretty much flush with the side of the building. Okay, these are very flexible, so you'll be able to manipulate them to a certain degree. Try and judge them by eye, as well as maybe using one of the MDF strips from the central part of the hard standing. What I've got here is just a spare strip of MDF that I've used to make sure they're straight when I place them on. Okay, so I'm kind of judging it by eye. There is actually a bit of flex in between the trusses of these cross members. You can't do much about that, okay? But you're not really going to see them because obviously the roof's going to be on. So the bottom one gets fitted pretty much bang on with the edge of the building. Then I fitted this one, and I have followed the instructions and gone 7.5 centimeters or 75 millimeters from the apex downward. Okay, and it's 75 millimeters from the apex to the bottom edge of this little member here. Okay, so measure down 75, and then the truss sits above that mark, if you like. This one here is the same kind of principle. It's 3.5 centimeters or 35 millimeters down, pencil marked it, and then put the truss on, the top or the apex side of that pencil marking. Why am I so bothered about this? Well, we need to leave a gap here for the windows, and underneath the windows there's a window frame which you'll see in the following clips, and we need to leave enough room for that. Okay, so just follow the instructions please to make sure you've not got any issues with that. Windows sections 75, 35. Okay, and the top one there is glued pretty much near the apex, maybe 1 or 2 mil down, right the way along. The roof has now been attached, which was quite a big job in itself to get everything lined up, and for this I used Deluxe Materials Speed Bond adhesive, and this adhesive is basically a fast setting PVA, so it's water based, and I put a bead of the Speed Bond along each of the roof supports and then placed the roof in position. Now obviously I dry fitted this to check that the roof was the right length, didn't need any trimming, etc. And it was all fine, so I just applied the glue and then pressed the roof in position, doing one half and then the other. Take your time and allow the first half to kind of bite. Obviously with PVA, normal PVA, it will take longer, and because of the flexibility of the corrugated roof, it might be a bit more difficult to make it contact in every place, you know, and stay flat. So I would recommend you try the Deluxe Speed Bond. Now the roof overhangs slightly at the corners, which is correct, and there's also a gap here, which is the thickness of the supports that attach to the end, which you've obviously glued the roof onto. These will be hidden, these gaps, by an end capping piece, and along the top of the roof as well there's a slight join there, and that will be hidden as well with a full length apex panel. These two pieces here are your end apex capping, and these come as a flat piece. You have to score and fold. There is a slight indent there in the lasered piece for you to fold on. I just ran my standard blade very lightly along just to make it a little bit more flexible so I could bend it, and I bent it using a steel rule. So I bent it around the edge of a steel rule, and that way you get a nice crisp line along the lasered line, if you like. The middle parts may need a little bit of adjustment. I just had to open them out in a triangular fashion with a knife, just so that they actually sit properly on the apex. And also you have to possibly cut to size, and as you can see at the end there, I've angled the cut so that it sits properly, which you'll obviously see clearer when I've fitted it to the building. Taking you a bit closer in, I've done a bit of kit bashing, if you like, on this product, and I've cut vents in the roof, and then I've made these little kind of vent surrounds that go all the way through as well. So if you look into, you can see into the shed, and they've just been painted. I think it was dark sea grey from Tamiya that I painted them, and I fitted them from the inside out, and there's a flange there to hold it in position, and it was glued in position. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the vents that I've used on my office to fit the vents on top, and there should be obviously a gap between the roof and the vent to allow obviously the fumes and that to vent from the building. So this is not part of the standard kit. this was an addition that I decided to put on just to make it a little bit different than the mainstream kit. It's from the inside that you really get a sense of how detailed this kit is. You can see the grey supports there that the roof is glued onto, and the windows sit neatly in between those roof supports. You'll see my vent flanges there on the inside of the roof, and obviously that's where I've applied the glue. I've not broken any of the trusses during construction, they were all intact, and I've taken my time to ensure the kit is done properly. There is no point in spending £100+ on a kit like this to rush it and then obviously have errors and compromises. Really, as I've emphasised through both of these videos on the shed build, take your time and do a proper job. I've now fitted the end parts to the fascia, and as you can see, it neatly covers the end of the corrugated roof. And this is what it's like in real life, I'm assuming, just to prevent water ingress and also to give it a nicer finish to the end of the roof. These were, as I said earlier, lightly scored and then folded round the roof, and I've glued them in place using the Deluxe Speed Bond. There's an impressive view of the completed shed. The two closed doors there with the wasp stripes. You can have them vertical, yellow black. Some sheds do have that. Some have complete yellow, and in the case of the one I'm closely following, the one based at Haymarket, it had the horizontal stripes. I'm just going to focus in on a couple of added extras that I've talked about earlier but now have been fitted to the kit. The roof vents here are a complete design by me. The actual vent covers are York Model Making 3D printed kits, and I got them designed for me for my office at the depot. They are sitting on a small frame, as I covered earlier, that goes through into the actual shed. The vents at the side here, the extractor fans, they are a scale model scenery kit. You get large, medium and small. This is a medium one, and I've covered that in a previous update, and I think it just sets off the shed and you know, breaks up the brickwork. Extraction fans like this would have been placed there obviously in an area with poor ventilation, or in the case of a bit of machinery that had extraction attached to it, the hoses have got to go somewhere, and through the extractor fan in the wall is the usual way of doing that. From this view you can also get a good idea of how the capping correctly fits round the corner there. It's designed to fit round the corner. It's been scored to fit round the corner. So really putting it anywhere else isn't really doing the design justice. But I say this has to be trimmed to fit. Steve from Laser Lines has given it slightly longer to allow obviously a bit of variation depending on your build. Looking at the window side of the shed, you've got the concrete style window ledge there. That's just been painted with Precision Paints weathered concrete. You've got very fine window frames. I've sprayed them in Humbrol Dark Sea Grey, and I've used the frosted glass there for the window covering. It's following the prototype. It makes it more realistic, and if you want to see into the shed, there's plenty windows in the roof. The frames really set the window cutouts, and even if you want to leave them without any glazing, I think it's a must to add realism and to do this kit full justice. Well, I hope you enjoyed that two-part video series on the Railway Laser Lines 2-lane loco shed. It really is a stunning kit, and I have to say I fully endorse what Steve's done with this. I spoke to Steve back at Worley last year when he had just released his 3-lane engine shed, and I said, look, I'm looking for a 2-lane with a bit more brickwork and options to get these style of doors at the front. So Steve went away and he's kept me informed throughout the design process, and to finally get the first kit off the official production line sent to me to build for Steve is really an honour, and I'm glad that I've been able to do it justice, and come up with such a successful looking outcome. I really am chuffed with what I've managed to achieve actually. If you want to get your hands on one of these kits from Railway Laser Lines, with this video there's a special coupon, a discount code. So if you head over to buy one of these and use the discount code DeanPark10, you'll get yourself 10% discount off this specific kit. Remember, I've done a bit of additions to it. I've added the vents and the extraction. These are not part of the standard kit. You have to do a bit of kit bashing on those yourself. But even without the vents, the kit really does stand out on a scene. I can't really wait to get it up the attic and blend it in with the rest of the depot. It will be getting some subtle weathering just to blend it in, because obviously I know a pristine depot building isn't really one that you see often at a depot. Bits of advice I'd give you if you're trying this kit: plan what colour scheme, like brickwork and roof colour, you want. Take your time when actually putting it together. You're going to break trusses if you're not careful. If you don't dry clamp and dry test before fitting it, you're going to run into problems like I've covered in the video. Just take your time. It's not a 24-hour kit job. It takes time to get to a standard that really you should be looking for. It's not a difficult kit to build, it just takes a bit of careful handling of the fragile parts. The instructions are very comprehensive, and Steve is always at the end of an email or through his Facebook page to answer any questions or queries you've got throughout the build process. I know me and Steve have been communicating throughout the build on ways that it could be built or improved, or why he's done it this way, and he's always come back to me with updates and advice. So thanks for that, Steve. I owe you one there. So there you have it, the Railway Laser Lines 2-lane loco shed. A really fitting addition to any layout.